we're not necessarily exceptional for having an appointed second chamber, and it's one that I argue that does add value to the political process, and I think that's core in ensuring we have good law in this country, or at least better law than otherwise it would be if we did not have the current second chamber. It's in need of reform, but not change that would get rid of the present benefits. That's some of the problems certainly with Gordon Brown's proposals, and to some extent with what Keir Starmer has been saying. So on the one hand, he was talking about getting rid of the Lords while maintaining it to continue its current functions, as if you can separate as discrete entities the way a body is chosen and the job that it does, and the two clearly are linked. So the present House does add value in terms of the law of this country. I regard ensuring this nation has good law is a public good, and I think the House of Lords contributes to that, which is its principal role. It's detailed legislative scrutiny. It improves the law of this country. So we want to, I would argue, only retain that. So one has to be wary of sort of big bang reform, grand reform, which often takes the form of displacement activity. The nation's got problems. People come up with constitutional reform because it's a fairly simple, straightforward proposal, rather than actually getting down to the real issues. And of course, it takes time to get through large-scale reform, whereas taking the existing House, making changes to it to improve what it does, is eminently doable. That's one of the reasons I'm putting forward my bill.
I mean, basically,
we've got through other changes through private members' legislation.
I mean, you basically brought forward your bill because, frankly, a lot of rotters have been appointed to the House of Lords. Would that be right?
Well, it's both quantity and quality, because there are too many of us. The House accepts that. We've passed a motion unanimously that the House itself is too big, that we should work to reduce our numbers. But there's no point reducing numbers if more and more peers are simply being created. And there's an argument as well for upping the quality threshold of those appointed, both to contribute to the work of the House, but also to maintain public trust. There was a survey some years ago when the public were asked, what are the most important attributes that contribute to the legitimacy of the House of Lords? The one that came top was trust in the appointments process. So what my bill's designed to do is to reform the process, up the quality level, address size, but also introduce transparency into the system as well. So those are eminently achievable, and we could move on those very quickly.
I mean, basically, you're saying that party leaders should still be able to nominate people, but that the appointments committee should have the final say on whether they get in, because we know Boris Johnson, for example, overruled people who said people were unfit.
Well, they wouldn't be able to make any nominations until the commission itself had studied them, scrutinised them, made sure they meet both high quality thresholds, they've got a capacity and willingness to contribute to the work of the House. Commission itself would have the capacity to generate further criteria, having regard to the diversity of the United Kingdom. So they'd all have to go through the Appointments Commission, which would be put on a statutory basis, and party leaders in making nominations would have to furnish the Commission with details on the process and the criteria by which they're putting those names forward, because I think transparency is an extremely important part of it, albeit only part. So there's quite a lot of changes embodied in the bill, including principles that the Prime Minister would have to have regard to, such as getting the size of the House down so it's no bigger than the Commons, that at least 20% of the members are crossbench peers. In other words, independent members, which contribute so much to the House at the moment in terms of experience and expertise, and also making sure that no one party has an absolute majority of seats in the House of Lords, because I think that's absolutely vital. The government cannot take the House for granted, and so that ensures the House complements the Commons. It's qualitatively different. There's a very different culture in the Lords. I mean, the House of Commons, you have the culture of assertion. In the Lords, it's a culture of justification. So I think those qualitative differences are absolutely crucial to our political system. There's no point replacing the current second chamber with one that's either going to duplicate the first or conflict with it. Those just create far greater problems than anything we have in our current system.
We haven't had former Prime Minister Gordon Brown's plans published, but they have been widely leaked. What do you think's wrong with them?
Quite a number, because they would not maintain the quality of the existing system. We've got a second chamber that complements the first, and it adds value by the nature of the membership. I mean, partly the political composition with no one party having an absolute majority, but also the individuals who are appointed, because despite some high-profile appointees that attract controversy, it's the rest, if you like, that matter, that make up the majority of the House,
but
who are there because of their experience and their expertise. That ensures that the Lords can engage in detailed legislative scrutiny, which you're going to lose, I think, if you have it as simply a second elected chamber.
Isn't there a basic constitutional problem, and you're the expert, you know better than me, that we are one of the few democracies, so-called democracies, where people are appointed to the legislature without any backing up at the ballot box?
No, no, we're not that exceptional. There's quite a number of second chambers that are wholly appointed, including, of course, the Canadian Senate. Now, it's a minority.
Can be done off lists,
but then it's a minority of second
difference.
chambers that are part elected, part appointed. It's a minority of second chambers that are wholly elected. So we're not exceptional.
Not personally elected, but they are endorsed at elections, aren't they?
No, they're appointed second chambers. So that's, as I say, we are not, somehow people seem to think we stand out as having an appointed second chamber. We don't. I mean, we stand out because we've got a second chamber. Most nations are unicameral. So you have to justify why you need a second chamber. And I think that's eminently doable, or exception in the way that members used to be appointed. It was hereditary, of course. We've now moved to, if you like, more meritocratic basis, but we're not necessarily exceptional for having an appointed second chamber. And it's one that I argue that does add value to the political process. And I think that's core in ensuring we have good law in this country, or at least better law than otherwise it would be if we did not have the current second chamber.